Welcome. Today, we're going to unpack the big ideas behind international trade. The theories that basically built the global economy as we know it.
Okay, so here's what we've got on deck. We're going to start with the super basic question. Why even trade in the first place? Then we'll get into the big theories, absolute and comparative advantage. After that, we'll talk about a country's natural resources and wrap things up by asking, do these old theories even work today? It's going to be a good one. All right, first things first. Before we dive into the nitty-gritty theories, let's tackle the most fundamental question there is.
I mean, you've probably wondered this, right? Why doesn't every country just make its own stuff? It seems so much easier. Well, the answer, and the key to why we're all better off, boils down to one really powerful idea.
And that idea is specialization. The concept is simple. If a country focuses its energy on making what it's really, really good at, it gets way more efficient. And that efficiency means more stuff, more wealth, and a better life for everyone involved. Once they start trading, of course. So check this out. This graph is called a production possibility curve, or PPC. It's a fantastic way to see the tough choices every country has to make. Let's say a country can only make two things, computers and cars. This curve shows all the different combos they can produce with their resources. The catch? You can't have it all. To make more cars, you have to make fewer computers. It's a classic trade-off.
Okay, that makes sense. But how does a country pick what to specialize in? Well, the first big answer to that question came from a guy you've probably heard of, the father of modern economics himself, Adam Smith.
And Smith's idea is super intuitive. He called it absolute advantage. Basically, if your country is the absolute best in making something cheaper, faster, better than anyone else, then that's what you should make. You focus on that, sell it to the world, and buy the stuff other countries are best at.
Okay, let's look at a quick example. Here we've got the US and Japan. You can see the US can pump out 40 units of computers, while Japan makes 20. But flip it to cars, and Japan makes 40, while the US only makes 20. This is absolute advantage in a nutshell. It's a no-brainer, right? The US goes all in on computers, Japan goes all in on cars, they trade, and everybody wins. But wait a minute. Adam Smith's idea works great there, but it creates a really interesting puzzle. What if one country is just better at making everything? Does trade just stop? Does the stronger country just wall itself off and make everything? You'd think so, but another economist, David Ricardo, came along and said, nope. And honestly, his idea is where this whole thing gets mind-bendingly cool. Okay, get a load of this new scenario. Now, the US can make more computers and more cars than Japan. It has an absolute advantage in both. So, game over for trade, right? Wrong. This is where David Ricardo's genius comes in. He said, forget absolute advantage. We need to look at comparative advantage. It's not about being better at everything. It's about figuring out what you are relatively best at. It all boils down to this thing called opportunity cost. What do you give up to do something else? Look at the numbers. The US is twice as good at making computers as Japan is. But it's only 1.5 times as good at making cars. So its advantage is bigger in computers. That's its comparative advantage. It makes way more sense for the US to pour all its effort into making computers and just buy the cars from Japan. Here's a great way to think about it. Imagine a world-class surgeon who also happens to be a faster car mechanic than a professional mechanic. Should she fix her own car? Heck no! Her time is way more valuable in the operating room. She makes more money and saves more lives doing surgery. So she should focus on surgery and just pay the mechanic. That's opportunity cost, and that's comparative advantage. Okay, so those are the classic foundational theories, but, they focus a lot on how productive labor is. And let's be real, the modern world is a lot more complicated than that. There are other big pieces to this puzzle. Take a look at these numbers from back in the 90s. You see Germany's hourly wages were way higher than the US or Japan. So you'd think, man, Germany must have been at a huge disadvantage, right? But that's not the whole picture. Because productivity is the other half of the equation. See, American workers back then were producing a ton of value per person. So even if their wages were high, they were so productive that it didn't automatically make their goods more expensive. The takeaway, it's not just what you pay your workers, it's about what you get for that money. And this brings us to another idea, the factor endowment theory. It's a bit of a mouthful, but the concept is pretty straightforward. It says a country's advantage isn't just about labor, it's about its whole mix of factors of production. Things like land, access to money or capital, and labor. So if a country has tons of forests, it'll probably export lumber. If it has a lot of capital, it might export high-tech machinery.
All right, so we have these powerful classic theories. They're the foundation for everything. But the big question is, how well do they actually explain what's happening in our super connected, globalized world today?
Well, the truth is things have gotten messy. Think about it. Trade isn't just country A selling to country B anymore. It's a crazy tangled web. Your phone might have parts from 10 different countries. Plus, money and even workers move across borders way more easily now. So yeah, the simple models get a little shaky, but the core ideas, specialization and advantage, they still give us a really good lens for understanding why things move around the globe the way they do.
And you can actually see countries using these ideas when they form trade blocs. Look at this chart. It goes from a simple free trade area, which is just, hey, let's not tax each other's stuff, all the way up to something like the European Union, which is a full-blown economic union with shared policies and everything. It's all about countries teaming up to play to their collective strengths on the world stage.
So that kind of leaves us with one big final question for today's world. When a product is designed in California, built with parts from South Korea and Taiwan, and assembled in China, what does country of origin even mean anymore? What is a country's real advantage in a world of global supply chains? The game has definitely changed, but believe it or not, the core principles we just talked about are still the best tools we have to figure it all out.